रंग चढ़े खुद का ही खुद पे बच्चों को तू ऐसे बढ़ा, बचपन मना रे यारा बचपन मना।
रोशन हो ये नन्हे दिए इन्हें तू रोज सजा, बचपन मना रे यारा बचपन मना।
जादू है ये जीने दे जरा, बचपन मना रे यारा बचपन मना।
गिरने दे बढ़ने दे उनको पास आए तो गले भी लगा,
बचपन मना रे यारा बचपन मना।
नई ये दुनिया नया आसमां,
बच्चों को बचपन से ही सिखा,
खेलते खेलते साथ निभा।
ऐसे तो उनका जीवन सजा।
ये बचपन है त्योहार हर दिन का, ये पहचान ले और रोज मना। बचपन मना रे यारा बचपन मना, बचपन मना रे यारा बचपन मना, बचपन मना रे यारा बचपन मना। अरे अब तो मना ले यारा।
Welcome everybody. Great to have you all join us today. This is a Bachpan Manav Masterclass with a focus on the research track, and we have a very, very special guest today, Dr. Beena Koshy. Very, very happy to introduce her and to have her share her research, foundational research. I think one of the few Indian clinical researchers working in the field of early childhood education, looking at brain research in particular. Very critical insight she brings to the table, and very, very happy that she will share with all of us today. As an introduction to Dr. Beena Koshy, she's a senior professor, developmental pediatrics in the Christian Medical College, Vellore. She's an Ida Scudder Clinical Research Chair and a DBT Wellcome Trust India Alliance Clinical and Public Health Intermediate Fellow. She is a developmental pediatrician with a passion to set standards for clinical service and research in childhood development and disability in India. She has experience of being a clinical academic in both India and the UK and has been part of international multi-site studies. Her research interests include early childhood experiences and cognition and autism spectrum disorder. And today she will be touching on early developmental intervention stimuli that have impact on cognition based on the longitudinal study that they have undertaken. It'll be very interesting to hear that. She has extensively published and has been awarded the Fellowship of Indian Academy of Pediatrics and the India Alliance ICPH Fellowship. She was selected as one of the 75 Young Indian Achievers by NSAU, UK and British Council in 2022-23 to mark the celebration of the 75th Indian Independence Day. Her alma mater, Newcastle University, has awarded her Rising Star in the Pride of Newcastle University Awards 2023. It's a privilege, Dr. Beena Koshy, and great pleasure to have you here amidst us. And over to you to share your work with everyone here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and vanakkam and namaste. And thank you, Radhika and team, the Xstep team, for having me on board. As said, I am a clinical academician, and we work with children, well babies and atypically developing babies as well. And it's a pleasure to interact with you, and I look forward to a fruitful discussion. So I'll just start sharing my slide, and then what we thought is we will have the presentation first, and then we can take some questions. So I'll just move ahead with sharing my presentation. Is the presentation visible?
Yes,
Okay, that's
Beena. Yeah.
So what I'll be talking today is how nurture, that is, the interactive nurture and nutrition shape growth and development, and what we find from Velo. Um, Please, you can post questions in the chat box, and if I'm becoming very technical, you can, highlight that as well. So just a minute, let me just move into my slide. Yeah. So why we talk a lot about early childhood period is actually because if you look at the picture on the right hand side, and this depicts actually the overall brain development from the time of conception, when the baby is in the womb, to the year 2 of the child. We call it the first 1,000 days. That is the time the maximum brain development happens. Why? Because network of brain networking happens there. We call it neural connections happen there. The trimming happen there. The wiring happens in that first period. And that is what is shown in this picture, where the maximum growth happens in the first 2. Then the next 3 years is actually the next 1,000 days. So we also talk about, as I said, the first 1,000, definitely important, but the 2 to 5 years, the second 1,000 days also is quite important. So what do we have in Velo? I'll just quickly go through it. We have 2 birth cohorts. As many of you know, we are in Tamil Nadu, we are near the Andhra border, and we are like a corporation, but we have low middle incomes, cohorts and settings nearby. So we have a cohort called the malnutrition and endemic disease cohort that we recruited in 2010, and the rotavirus, the childhood rotavirus infection cohort, we recruited in 2002. By God's grace, we have actually quite robust baseline information on both these cohorts. As you can see, there is almost a decade separation. We also have another cohort that we have recruited now, which is actually from the rural area. And in 25, actually, we have, the 4th cohort also as part of an RCT we are recruiting in Velo. So we have these resources where we can compare and contrast and see what we sometimes call the secular trends, how things change over time. This is a very, very busy slide. I just put in to show how much in detail we have followed these children now. We have the antenatal, before pregnancy, pregnancy time information, delivery information, after delivery, early childhood, and growth, blood testing for nutrition, and development, behavior analysis at different time points. And I just also want to highlight that we have done 9-12 years MRI brain, that is a neuroimaging of the brain scanning, which is actually quite unique in a group of children who have had stunting and catch-up. I think we're the first in the world to show that. This slide is to show there has been quite an intense workup of our cohorts at different time points. So I will present today the evidence because I know many of you are interested in early childhood education. We will talk about early childhood education. We will then move on to childhood growth and nutrition. Majority of my work actually is on early childhood development, cognition, and neuroimaging. As you can see, this is actually one of our community meetings, very evidently during the COVID time. But we are blessed to have very engaging, participating communities who, for whom COVID is not a big deal. They come out and participate still. So what we bring to the table, definitely there are a lot of other birth cohorts, and there is actually Vellore itself as an older birth cohort, the Vellore birth cohort. And there is actually the Young Lives cohort and other cohorts that some of them are following up from an economic point of view. But what we bring to the table is we bring in different strands. I believe childhood doesn't stand alone just on nutrition or education. All these are intersecting factors. So we look at the anthropometry, which means actually the growth parameters, height, weight, head circumference, the body mass index, the waist circumference. Again, neurocognition, we don't just look at the mathematical or logical intelligence. We look at higher order skills like executive functions. We look at behavior. And we also look at resilience because Again, just like how we talked, the first 1,000 days are important for child's cognition, development. It's also important for the mental health. We have also blood analysis, hemoglobin, iron, ferritin, all these, micronutrient analysis. As I already discussed, we have the brain volumetric analysis. As you can see in the picture here on the right, we can take images, we can run it through a software and can look at different parts of the brain. Again, by God's grace, we are the first to get a hyperfine. It's actually a portable MRI, like how you say a portable ultrasound. We can take it into the community. Currently, it is situated in one of our community clinics, and our institution is the first to get this through one of our projects. So moving on, we'll look at the ACE evidence. As I think already I've talked to you about the first 1,000 days, this is actually well recognized. The first picture here on the left side show different parts of the brain, how they work on learning. Executive functions are there, social cognition, emotions are there. So each part of the brain interconnectedly have different functions. Definitely WHO and UNICEF, all of them, they understand this. And the picture in the middle is the NCF picture. We call it a nurturing care framework. There are 5 components for it. As you can see, adequate nutrition, responsive caregiving. The interactive caregiving is actually a very important component of it. Definitely safety and security has to be there for the child. And opportunities for early learning is a component of the NCF, and good health. Also, I have put in actually what can be the quality and what are the components of early childhood education services as well. So let's look at what evidence we have found. We actually, this is the malady cohort. We, at 5 years of age, we went to the community and asked what type of educational opportunities children had. So some of them went to Anganwadi. If there is a structured education happening there, we have included that. Some of them went to a private or a government-aided school. So children had opportunities for early childhood education in the 2 to 5 years of age. We captured that. And we did actually the concurrent cognition. If you look at the picture on the figure on the left-hand side of the screen, that is actually the EC and cognition at 5 years. So VIQ is verbal intelligence. PIQ is performance. If you notice, for 5 years, there is something called a processing speed, because we use a BIPSI, a Bechler actually at 5 years. So that gives us a processing speed also. And combinedly, we can have the full scale IQ. So group 1, we took children and their ECE status and split them into 3 groups. First group had no education. Second group had 1 to 17 months, and some of them had more than 18 months. So if you look at it, you can see there is a slow increase in the overall performance depending upon the duration of the ECE. The ones that are marked actually show, and you can see that there are some outliers, but there is, I'll come to the table later, but there is a significant improvement concurrently. Concurrently means when the ECE is going on and we are doing an assessment, children have a better cognition. Oh, that's not a big deal, but we also wanted to see predictively. I had something now, how long these effects last. So that is when we did at 9 years, we used a MISIC. MISIC is a Mallin's intelligence, which is actually an Indian version of Bechler. So that gives us a verbal IQ, performance IQ, and a total IQ. As you can see, children who had no ECE, they perform slightly lower than children who had 18 months and above ECE. Let's look at the tables now. This is about the 5-year one. So children who had early childhood education, when we look at the VIQ, they had the ones who are bold actually show there is a significant difference, had a difference of 3.32 verbal IQ better. In the performance IQ, it is around 5.54. The processing speed also, if you look at, is 19.55. This is also significant, and a full scale IQ of 6.75. We usually say the cognition, one standard deviation is 15 points. So this variance, this difference actually goes in from maybe a 0.3 standard deviation to more than 1 standard deviation. So the effect size is quite good for a concurrent. Let's look at 9 years. When at 9 years, actually, you can see the overall effect size is a little lower. You can get, here we were talking about 19, which is above 1 ST. Here we are talking about maybe a 0.6 standard deviation gain because of early childhood education. There are a lot of other factors. I think, as you can understand, every factor we will not be able to capture. But as you can see in our model, we adjusted it for home environment, gender or sex of the child, socioeconomic status, and early life standing. So a lot of these factors like nutrition, home interaction, sometimes girls talk earlier, boys walk earlier. So all these factors we have corrected. Even after these corrections, it is surprising to note that the structured EC in early childhood continue to affect the 5-year and 9-year. Actually, we have done the 12-year as well. And even at 12 years, actually, we haven't put that results here. We just submitted it to PLOS again. The effect size is lower, but still the early childhood education has a positive effect even at 12 years of cognition. That is, we can call it a pre-adolescent cognition. So just move on and talk about the Heckman curve. I think many of you have heard about it. Professor Heckman, who is a Nobel laureate, talk about the benefit of early childhood investment, development investment. What he was, he was talking about a lot of programs are there at different time points. And what he was talking was early childhood development time point is a very smart investment that gives the highest return. So is ECE, he was talking about 0 to 5 years. So life cycle benefits of 13% return of investment is the calculation that he has published. Better employment, income, permanent gains in intelligence quotient, emotional quotient, better health outcomes, and the negative things are lower drug use, criminal behavior also are lower. So we have now just quickly looked through the ECE component. Let's move on to the growth and nutrition. So this is actually an audience question, okay? And I would like to see whether, the responses. So over time, I was talking about the secular growth trends, if you remember earlier. What do you think, childhood growth patterns? If I took a 2-year-old in 2005, a 2-year-old in 2015, and a 2-year-old in 2025, how will their growth patterns be? Will it show a declining pattern? Will it show gains over time? Or will it remain the same? Or it's very difficult to say, isn't it? A lot of other factors come in. So I like to see the chat. If you can just put in some answers to this. This is talking about the secular growth trends over time. How do you think it will be? All right. Okay. I think we can talk about it. If good quality ECs continued, you can see gains. Yeah. See, the growth is very much related to the nutrition as well. So this is actually, I was talking about 2 cohorts that we have seen. Please put in your chat what you think, appropriate. We can discuss that later. This is actually the rotavirus study, as I said, in 2002, and the mallet study. There was actually more low birth weight in the mallet cohort, more diarrhea, and more concerns, infections in the mallet cohort. But the biggest change, if you can see here, is better socioeconomic status, and more mothers are better educated in the mallet cohort. You can see the primary school and below is less in the mallet, while it was more than 57% were primary school and below in the rotavirus study. So definitely these 2 factors have improved over time. And when you really look and see between the rota and the mallet cohort, I will just walk you through this. This is called the height Z-score, the standard deviation score. And you can see actually that children in the rota cohort had low. So sorry, my dog has decided to. And so you can see in the rota cohort, the children had a lower Z-score. The mallet cohort actually have a better Z-score. That means they had better the next group. And if you look at the prevalence of stunting, you can see the Rota cohort had more stunted children compared to the Mallet cohort. So definitely the secular trends show that children are better off in the latter cohort. And if you look critically, you can see that the biggest difference actually is socioeconomic status and maternal education. And this is not something we have actively gone and intervened in the community. These are secular trends happening in the community itself. I think there's a lot of thought to, for our interventions and our planning. Again, looking at what actually affects the Z-score or the height, the linear growth patterns in both cohorts, there's no surprises there, if I may say so. Birth weight continue to influence. A child who is low birth weight have a lower growth pattern in both. Girls, if given equal opportunities, they grow better than boys. Socioeconomic status is influential in the married cohort and the education of the head of the household as well. So what I just wanted to say was, though we all work with children and we want child-specific interventions, but child doesn't stand alone. No, child stands in the family, in the community, in the society. So a lot of societal interventions, improvement in SES, maternal education, actually have a ripple effect on children's well-being as well. So we just quickly talk about the stunting and catch-up growth. You can see at birth, around 85% children are okay, they are fine. So you can see that here, this bit is a normal growth. Okay, they are better than the -2 standard deviation. This slightly more grayer bit is actually children who are stunted, but it is below the -2 standard deviation and the -3 between that. And children who are depicted as the black bit, here they are actually below the they're more stunted actually, below the -3 standard deviation. But when we talk of stunting, we talk of these two groups. Literature also says, and also we also have seen in our studies, a maximum stunting happens at 2 years, where around 45% of our children are stunted. As you can see, children catch up, and out of the 45% who were stunted, 80% of children catch up by 9 years of age. And if you look at 9 years, you can see only 10% of children, that is 20% of the stunted group remain stunted. 10% of the whole cohort remains stunted at all time points. People may ask, what is a big deal? But mind you, this is actually talking about at birth to 2 years is actually roughly the first 1,000. 2 to 5 years is the second 1,000. We also talk about the third 1,000, which is 5 to 8 years. We didn't have funding at 8 years. We managed to have only at 9 years. But this actually is talking about the different components of childhood and to see how these influence cognition and development. So what actually, we will come to that later. We have actually shown that children stunted at all time points perform much worse than children never stunted. We also be interested, many of you work in the communities. We just want to see which group of children have to have the maximum support or intervention. There are a lot of cognitive assessments out there, but many of them require training, expensive, difficult to do. So we just wanted to do some easy things. We have been doing some studies on that. I just want to talk about head circumference. We talk about height, weight. We sometimes talk about the mid-upper arm circumference, but head circumference is a very easy thing. You get a measuring tape and you get a head circumference measuring instrument also now, which is actually a modified tape. So what we have shown here is head circumference at 2 years, concurrently predicted cognition at 2, and predictively associated with cognition at 5 years of age. So if you see a child who has small head, maybe it's not like 100% they may have needs, but maybe that child may need some support, and we can concentrate on them a little bit more. So children who were having a small head circumference had, when you're looking at 2-year cognition as an association of -2.21, this is IQ points. So they actually were performing lesser than 2.21 points compared to the ones that had normal head circumference. We also, as I said, predictively association, you can see the -3 SD. was associated with the 5-year cognition as well. It's just a simple tool, but somebody wants to use it. That is actually a great thing. When we are looking at head circumference, we really need to take it again. I'm always critical of my own findings. We need to take it with a pinch of salt because we wanted to find out what are actually the factors causing the small head. And there are no surprises again there, just like how our textbooks say that it is associated with stunting and also is associated with, if you look at here, the paternal and fathers and mothers head circumference actually are the biggest factors contributing to the head circumference of babies. It doesn't mean that small head is bad, but we have actually used a more lower cutoff than the standard small head because almost 50% of all of us actually have a slightly smaller head compared to the Caucasian population. That is perfectly fine. But within the population, we can define a cutoff and that can be used as a screening measure. Now, coming to the other component, we talked about a little bit on nutrition, but on top of nutrition, we also have micronutrient deficiency. And also in this current climate crisis, climate change crisis and environment also is a big factor. We talk about toxins, toxicity. So we have actually shown here that the chronic lead toxicity was associated with 2-year cognition and iron was associated with 5-year cognition. I'll just quickly go through. I think we need to cover quite a bit of matter here. So we, as expected, this, mind you, this is using the old WHO cutoff. There's a new WHO cutoff has come. If anybody is interested, we can talk about that. Maximum anemia is seen actually at 1 year plus, and they pick up further. Maximum iron deficiency anemia is also seen at 1 year plus 15 months. If you look at blood lead levels, actually it is going up. Again, we have done an analysis. We'll come to that. But you can see the 2-year cognition is associated with the blood and the 5-year with the iron levels. So I was talking to you just about the catch-up growth. We actually have looked at this stunting and catch-up growth and wanted to see how they perform in cognition at 9 years of age. You can see here that children always stunted, stunted at 2, 5, and 9 years. They were actually worse by minus 4.61. That is 0.3 standard deviation of cognition a point. The total IQ also did function in the same way. We were not seeing a similar thing in performance because our kids are not that good in performance tasks. That's what we have found. But they pick it but much better at 12 years when we have analyzed again. So see, socioeconomic status is still an important component. Maternal cognition also is an important component here. But I just wanted to show that if you look at here, there is actually a dose response. Children who catch up earlier, within the first 2000 days, they perform better than the children who catch up in the third 1000. You can see a minus 1.79 and compared to children who never catch up. So even intervention in the school years where a midday meal is provided actually has a positive effect. But the best window is the first 1000 days and the second 1000 days after. Coming to a little bit on nutrition, I think most of you are familiar with the importance of breastfeeding. This is actually meta-analysis. Meta-analysis means they actually compile all the evidence out there about one particular subject, and they have compiled it. And this is actually, we call it a forest plot. If this diamond is on the right side or the left side without touching the line, that has got a positive effect. So any breastfeeding group has better long-term cognitive scores and less neurodevelopment impairment in preterms. But, motor and language development is a little inconclusive. So now we come to the next question. As per the current recommendation, WHO, IAP, AAP, Indian Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy, the duration of exclusive breastfeeding should be how long? Feel free to punch your answers in. 6 months, okay. Miss Ray, you got it right. Yeah, you're bang on, right, actually. 6 months is a current recommendation. So let us see how our children are doing in the community. This is actually one of the studies that we have done in the community with the government of Tamil Nadu, JPAL, IFPRI, and Cornell. Actually, when you look at it, there is an ideal setting and there's something else happening in the community. When you look at by 3 months, you can see 75% women are exclusively breastfeeding, which drops to 25% by 6 months. Why so? Because there are multiple factors there. And you can actually see women also, though they are picking up in their BMI, underweight is becoming better, but we are seeing more obese women who have their own health concerns as well. So when we looked at complementary, I think overweight, obesity is increasing. We also captured information on complementary feeding. And I just want to highlight only one part in it. We can see here, complementary feeds are feeds that we start around 4 to 6 months, 6 months plus, in addition to the breastfeeding. So less than 2 years, you can see 30% plus children in both urban and rural areas have sweet beverage consumption and unhealthy food consumption. So that is a little scary. I just wanted to put it out there for everyone's information. So appropriate, suggestions can be provided to people in your area. So we looked at the breastfeeding practices across 8 sites in the MALAD cohort. It was done in 8 different sites in different parts of the world. Bello was in the India site. So median duration of exclusive breastfeeding across all places was only 33 days. And the early introduction of other feeds caused a high risk of mortality. Now let's look at the malady data in India. We actually could show that we had a little bit better. Exclusive breastfeeding was for 2.5 months, that's 77 months. And exclusive breastfeeding at 4 months was around 22.1%, actually. It is, and EBF at 6 months, we saw only 1.1% babies having EBF for 6 months. So once we are doing the current analysis, it's 25% is better than what we did earlier in 2010, 2012. So if they belong to the low socioeconomic status, there is an early cessation of breastfeeding. So I just want to compare these two. What we did in 23 with the government of Tamil Nadu, around 25% exclusively breastfeeding at 6 months, better than what we found in the malady cohort. And when we look at what is troubling lactating mothers, they're confident, they're worried whether the milk is adequate. And that is actually a concern across all groups. We'll quickly move on to the development, cognition, and resilience. We looked at development at each time point. I'll quickly go through it. There are different domains. You can see actually the development actually over time is declining, okay? In the cognition, language, motor, and social domain. Why so? Definitely mother's cognition, mother's depression scores, maternal factors are very important. Nutrition is important, stunting, underweight. Micronutrients are important, body iron levels. Socioeconomic status always plays a role, irrespective of when you do, SES actually trumps in many ways. And what is also important is the home environment. Emotional and verbal responsibility of the caregiver, avoidance of restriction and punishment, and provision of appropriate play materials also are important for early childhood development. And we also wanted to look at what caused change in the home environment, okay? So this is looking at home environment at different time points. WAMI is a socioeconomic status that actually predicted the home environment. And if they had more children, the home environment worsened. I think it's not a surprise for us as well. And if mothers were actually having a mental health concern, that also caused a deterioration of the home environment. So when we're looking at home environment, we talk about 2 components. The physical environment is like your how many toys you have, what is the type of house you have, the assets, income, education, depression, all these affect the physical environment. But interactive environment, how well you play with the child, how well you interact with the child. And studies have shown, even for us actually, the interactive environment triumphs over the physical environment. That is actually how well you interact. And as you can see, the maternal factors play a huge role there. Some fun and interactive play and, imitative play. That interaction, actually, you don't need anything very expensive. You just need time and the willingness to share and play with children. And I sometimes think it's a great leveler, And we always talk about to see how we can make things accessible to all families, fun for all families, and interactive and playful for children as well. So we just looked at the videos just now, and just move on. I just briefly talked about cognition. Cognition has 9 components. We talk about the mathematical, logical cognition, talk about the emotional, the musical. A.R. Rahman, I'm definitely is excellent in musical cognition. But does anybody bother what his logical or mathematical cognition is? But mind you, all our IQ scores, cognitive scores, exclusively looked at reasoning and logical and mathematical cognition. So we were actually very interested, as I said earlier, about resilience. Resilience is advancing despite adversity. So we looked at early childhood environment and how is childhood resilience at 9 years. So the individual resilience domain was associated with the concurrent verbal cognition, no surprises there. But the total home environment at 2 years, the first 1,000 days. What in the home environment? The daily stimulation in the interactive home environment. The daily interactive stimulation predicted childhood resilience almost 7-8 years later. Okay, this is published, and I've just already covered that interactive component. Let's look at actually a little bit of a technical neuroimaging pattern. I will quickly go through it. Though there will be no stunting affects cognition, we have very limited information how different parts of the brain are affected. So we have done studies in that. Very, very basic slide. I will just summarize it saying that again, we have shown different parts of the brain. That is actually, this is cerebellum, or known as a small brain. Again, a dose response is shown, like children who catch up and who have better gain of height in the early period, they pick up even though they are stunted earlier. And other areas are actually deep brain gray matter structures, which are not important in primary functions, not like walking, talking, but they all act like networking areas. These areas are more affected. I will just skip through these because I think maybe a little too technical. We also looked at higher cognitive skills, or as many of you know, as executive functions. This is actually the test that we have done. What we found here is the verbal fluency and the inhibition, near misses actually show inhibition, are affected by your stunting. Persistent stunted children have poor verbal fluency and poor inhibition, which both are actually of the EF, executive function. Again, brain structures related to these were involved. Similar to what we saw earlier, the cerebellum deep brain structures, where all these are published. I will just move on due to lack of time and opportunities for questions. It's not perfect. I don't think any study is perfect. As I discussed earlier, I'm very critical of my own findings. Definitely a smaller sample size. We are one small cohort in one corner of the country. But what we have is it's a low-income urban slum setting, good follow-up, very good data granularity, standardized measures. And the CMC lab is actually one of the national reference lab and is involved in training. And we have put in QA/QC quite good. So I will skip this and I will come to I have put it in a graphical format. So this is looking at a summing up the evidence. Let's look at one by one. This is looking at the structured early childhood education. Structured ECE was associated with higher cognition scores, 5 years and 9 years. And I already told you, even at 12 years, we are finding that. Looking at childhood development cognition resilience, we saw a decline in developmental scores between 6 to 36 months. Home factors affect the early child development. Socioeconomic status, parity, and maternal factors affect home. High prevalence of small head circumference is there. Can we use it as a screening measure with a little lower cutoff? As I already discussed, the resilience was associated with early childhood stimulating home environment. When we come to growth, we saw that improvement in stunting is there in both the birth cohorts. Secular trends are positive, influenced by SCS and maternal education. In the married cohort, 10% of cohort all remain stunted at all time points. 80% children stunted at 2 years caught up. And we've started seeing some amount of overweight, obesity. I didn't put that evidence here. And we saw that children at 15 months had maximum anemia. We had the first Velu Child Development meeting where we had all these people who are working in the community in child development. We brought people from within the country and outside, and we brought it together and asked what are the priority things, to find out. So these are the priority questions researchers have brought in. I will just concentrate on home environment and the diverse Indian settings. We put a lot of effort on the mother. We were very interested to find out what's a father's role, what a grandparent's role, and as I talked about of the Bronfenbrenner biopsychosocial model, where it's not just the mother, but the overall society has an influence. Just quickly going through the community work of CMC Vellore. Vellore CMC was started in 1900 by Dr. Ida Scudder because she saw 3 women dying in childbirth in a single night. That changed her, and she went back to US, got trained, and came back and took all these bullock carts to the communities because nobody will come to the hospital then. So this community activities we still continue. We have an excellent community networks, and people like me who are interested in research, we go and work with these communities. We also have our own community meetings and clinics, as you can see during COVID time, after COVID time, we do clinics. And we always believe in involving communities. So the same child development questions we took to the community. And this is a priority questions community has come up with. How to improve complementary feeding, how to empower women, how to maximize a role of broader family. Why do I put this up? Because we as professionals may think something is important, but I always believe we need to work with the communities because they have to own this rather than just us. Common priorities between researchers and the community: maternal empowerment, how to maximize the role of broader family, including fathers, and home environment. If somebody is interested to explore this, please reach out to me. We are already working on this. We work with the government of India. This actually has worked as an expert panelist on one of the ECE workshop. And we have actually, when the Minister of Women and Child Development has put out an article, actually our papers were extensively quoted, and we had an opportunity to present to Niti Aayog as well. Where are we headed next? As we told already, new cohort, we are looking into a little more finer details of how we can look at some of these factors. We have extensive collaborations, and if any of you are interested where you think our expertise will help you, we are very happy to network with you. But I really don't believe in a top-down approach. I believe in the wisdom of the community, and it has to be a participatory one. So what can we, I think we already did this, acting on the evidence, what can we do? Okay, how we are doing on it. Structured ECE, the National Institute of Women, the Savitri Phule National Institute of Women and Child Development, they have brought out 2 curricula, the Adarshila and Navachetana. They're quite good, actually. I suggest them in my clinic. This is something because some parents actually are lost what to do, how to do. So, initial primer. Childhood development, cognition, resilience, how can we help? Definitely parenting programs, parenting training has to be there. How can we optimize a home environment? We see a lot of electronic media usage recently. Though current recommendations are there, I don't think this reach out to the communities, and e-media or mobile use is seen as an aspirational thing. Interactive environment, how we can have that interactive environment at home, not just for mental health, but for overall development. Socioeconomic status, there are secular trends, as I have shown, people are becoming better. Definitely has to have balanced nutrition and healthy food. And there is a movement to move back to a lot of the millets and other healthy foods all over the country. And talk about the micronutrient supplementation in adolescents, mothers, maternal, mental, and physical health, and definitely the first 1,000 days. Many of these areas we are already working in, and if these are the areas that if anybody is keen, we can work on as well. So how can we further develop this? We can integrate the early childhood space. Can we integrate? I really do not believe all these, though I have presented it in a little bit of a silo fashion. These are very interconnected. The early childhood growth, the development, the behavior, the maternal interaction, parenting, home environments, and the EC. And I will just like to conclude. I think I am well within my maybe a couple of minutes over time. This is actually my research team, this is my clinical team, and this is my community team. And I would like to end my talk with this. This is actually a family that in the low cost, LCCU, the Malad area that we work with one of our community team. This is Valli, her grandmother. These are her grandchildren. The children's mother passed away in childbirth, and you can see grandmother was very motivated. So the community team stepped in and they kept them in an MBKJ Panna, where actually the grandmother worked as a house mother, and children were enrolled there as well. And actually, it's a pleasure to see the boy now. He's doing a lab technician course in CMC. And this is the party or the grandmother. And you can see the older pictures of them in the computer there. It is actually, we have no role in this. Let me own that up. It's because of the community teams and the overall, interconnected work. And by God's grace, CMC is able to provide that. Thank you all for your patient listening, and I'm very happy to take questions. Thank you.
Lovely. I think many insights emerging from your research. I think many of us here working in the field of early childhood space, but I think to have science beef up with evidence some of the findings that we are familiar with is always useful. I think many very interesting points that you touched upon. The impact of early developmental interventions across, say, language, cognition, resilience, etc., along with how nutrition plays a big role. Just a couple of things I wanted to ask while people prepare to ask their questions, and I invite everyone to ask questions. I think very interesting you touched on head circumference as one of the very tangible and easy screening tip for any educator. I mean, we have among our audience educators. So that is something that can become an alert that people can take forward. If there is anything else of that nature, or if you want to shed more light, wanted to understand.
Yes, we have used a segment form board. I don't know how many of you are familiar with an SFB board. Segment form board, if I remember, is I think 9 shapes. It's basically children are given 3 attempts to actually put those shapes in, and you take the best timing. You use a stopwatch and you time it. And based on the best timing, you can get a rough cognitive score. It is very useful because it's a non-verbal intelligence. You are not carrying a very heavy, like Bailey and all, you need to lug around a big suitcase with all the assessment things. And it's just like a small, I may have that with me. Just let me just see whether I can share that. I might have hidden that, but so SFP is another tool that can be easily done in the community. And we have actually shown that SFB has concurrent social cognition association and predictive association with cognitive assessment later on. Okay, so it is a good measure to do it in the community, and it can be used, I think, as a measure of readiness of school, where at least in the nonverbal cognition. So we have published that as well. It is available as a resource. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for that. There's one question in the chat from Urmi Ray. Urmi Ray, invite you to speak up if you feel comfortable. What is the recommendation to improve nutrition status in the age group of 6 months to 23 months?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Ray, for that question. See, my recommendation will be to use locally available nutrient-rich food, but at the same time, maybe reduce your unhealthy food exposure. As we saw in our work with the GOT, Government of Tamil Nadu, less than 2 years, 33% are having sugary drinks and unhealthy food, including chips and what all. And so if you remember, most of our families used to use ragi sprouted ragi, and even actually the sattumava that in Tamil Nadu they give, actually it's a very highly nutritious content, but it doesn't come in fancy packets and no chubby babies. So people are not very proactive. So I sometimes think all of us should encourage locally available, easy to access, nutritious food for our children, because overall it is not just about undernutrition, right? It is about also to prevent overnutrition and obesity as well. And as I said, some of the governments are very proactive, like the government of Tamil Nadu, even Kerala, and I'm definite many of the states in the country provide good quality early supplements, actually, which can act as a weaning food. I hope I answered that question. Again, I always believe, getting back to the community, when we want to work, we may need to have a focus group discussion to see what they think is appropriate. For example, in Tamil Nadu, they use crushed nuts a lot or powdered groundnuts a lot. While in Kerala, I think we don't use groundnut at all. The two states I have practiced. So definitely there are differences. So I think we have to be accommodative of that. Second, your comment, I really like it. Head circumference is mostly not in practice at community level. I 100% agree with that. Actually, it's a struggle for us even to convince our own pediatricians to take head circumference, but it's one of the most important measures. It's not just a static HC measure. Every visit, that head circumference actually gives you very valuable information. And I'm a big believer in that. And I'm really happy to know that the audience also agrees with me. And it is actually marked in your MCP mother and child protection card. But people usually really do not, take effort to do that. That may be one easy way to screen and identify needy children.
Thanks, Dr. Beena. There is one more question from Shweta.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Chakravarti. Yeah. So definitely gut health is very crucial. I think I also have a couple of slides on brain gut axis, but I haven't put that up. It is actually the question of what has come first. Okay. If you are anxious, if you're having any mental health concerns, definitely your neurotransmitters, your chemicals are different from a normal setting. And that also affects your gut health, your gut microbiome. That is what I believe in. We also have we have stored stool samples in our cohort, and we are planning to do a gut microbiome analysis to see how much it contributes. But overall, the understanding currently is how good is your gut microbiome diversity. How do you, because it's thousands of microbiomes we have in our gut. How do we analyze that? Or do you look at, the percentage of each? No, it isn't like that. It is a diversity of the gut microbiome. That actually is a crucial factor. That means we need to also have a diversity in our food that we eat, maybe more natural food, more adapted to the local cultures, what our ancestors have been consuming. Some of that we are epigenetically, genetically, we are, attuned to that. So the diet diversity is a current zoomed in, and the same way the gut microbiome diversity is what we are currently talking about as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Beena. One question, you speak about both interactive environments as providing nurture, as well as in the context of building resilience, right? Among the different methods or practices, are there practices that trump others? Whether it is group play or peer interaction or adult caregiver presence, or for instance, for building resilience, certain kinds of play which involve risk taking, or it doesn't really matter. It's just that you need to have rich, nurturing environments.
One thing that is very clear is, as I said, there are two components, a physical and interactive. The physical component is the number of toys and, whether you have a pakka house or a kacha house. And the interactive environment is how well you interact, or, that reciprocal thing that is happening with the child. The beauty of parenting or beauty of early childhood is it's not like how, okay, if you ask me how to make a chair, it's very easy for me to answer, these are the structures, because there is no dynamicity back from the chair, right? I hope you understand what I'm saying. But with a child, there is a lot of dynamicity there. Okay. So though we know, okay, definitely a lot of interaction, a lot of play, a lot of fun with the child, more social interaction, all these have their own benefits. But it's the wisdom is to have a balanced approach. And there are a lot of I haven't touched up the early childhood theories. Actually, if you look at Erickson, they talk about, there are Freudian principles, the Piaget principles. We talk about actually the trust versus mistrust as a first phase, 0 to 1. Who to trust, who not to trust. You trust your caregivers and you learn to not trust a stranger that much. That evolves by the end of 1 year. So the idea is actually the balance of it. So that depends not just on the parent who is giving parenting. That also depends on the temperament and dynamicity of the child. So that is actually the true answer. And but that actually makes it challenging, or let me say a fun thing for each parent to figure out, or each caregiver, or each professional to figure out, because each child is different. And I think that's the beauty of it. But one thing again I want to highlight is that interactive environment. If you, even a mother who may be a daily laborer is having a little bit of a fun and interaction and play with her own baby, actually that actually is the best way. It may not be the mother alone. Actually, if you look at the Navachetana that I think NIWCD has got out, a lot of, not just the mother, they depict actually the father, the grandmother. That's what we see in the community as well. Okay, so I can see, some Instagram details have come up here. So that is the beauty of parenting. Even if you have parented another child, your second born is different from the first born. Okay, all the techniques that you have used on the first born may not work for the second born. I think people who have more than one child will understand what I'm saying. So again, it's a new journey, because it's a new individual with their own temperament, their own individuality, and that's the beauty. Thank you.
Thanks. I think we've just exceeded time by a couple of minutes. One question maybe we can take up later. I think one aspect that you bring up, which is very fascinating, is maternal well-being, right? Which is, I think, less spoken about while we're talking of child development, right? And I remember early on when you said that you can only have joyful childhoods if you have joyful parents, right? That's so critical. Just if you want to briefly speak about what you are doing in that line. I know that you are working with the community on that front. If you want to briefly share something, that would be very nice.
Yeah, definitely, because we have seen, as one mother said, oh, this baby has come and where's the instruction manual? You'll be surprised, because people are professional now. They really need guidelines. And mind you, guidelines are out there. As I said, the NIWCDs, Navachetana, Adarshila is there. There is Palan 1000 app. WHO, UNICEF has clear guidelines on the first 1,000 days. There's a first 1,000 days booklet by the government of India. Even the MCP card has quite a bit of information actually on interaction and how to do things. But parents many times overlook these standard recommendations and get influenced by some influencer on, I don't know which Instagram, whatever, and get diverted, because the crucial information doesn't reach families. So what we have done is nothing new. We have actually compiled reliable resources and made a handout and had a very 15 to 20 minutes interactive discussion with parents in the postnatal ward in the hospital, and interactive discussion with mothers who have children 0 to 1 year in the community. And mind you, not even one of them had any formal parenting support. So many of them learn as they go. I think many of us have done that as being parents ourselves. But in this era, because where they turn left and right for support, I sometimes think clear guidelines, accessible guidelines, and how to access that should start in the antenatal period itself. Very difficult to convince OBG doctors. They think just delivering the baby is the most important thing. I completely agree. But overall, if you are looking at overall health, I think it should start antenatally. Even some people say it should start before, marriage itself, talking about empathy, connection, how to build relationships. Because mind you, we are dealing with a generation who are very good in connecting online, may not be that good connecting physically. It is a genuine struggle we see sometimes. So these things to reach out to families because they really don't know where to ask for help is my understanding now. This is what we have done in the community and in the postnatal wards and CMC. And now we work with the maternity nursing because I think nurses are a little bit more receptive than doctors currently because I can understand they're quite busy with other health concerns. So this will be given to all the postnatal mothers and there will be a session taken on that and they can contact our department also for further help. So that is how we have planned currently. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that. With that, if there's any pressing questions, please share, else we will mark an end to the Bachpan Manao Masterclass. Thank you, Dr. Beena Koshy. I think very insightful findings that you have shared with us. Thank you so much. Thanks to one and all who have joined the session today. Thank you and bye-bye. See you soon in the next class.
Thank you and namaste. Thank you.
मुल की हंसदी बोना से काठों मा होया कतगा रोते लोच मेरो गाँव मा होया माठो माठो आई ब्याखुनी पाख्यों मा होया माझी बाटू हिरणी चटियागी डेरा मा मुल मुल के हंस दे हो पूना से काठियों मा हो कतगारों तेलुचा।
बच्चों को सीखने की आजादी दो, उन्हें बचपन मनाने दो।